What's going on, everybody? Mortem here. This time we are talking about Wasteland 3's recently released Steeltown DLC. Now, it released on June 3rd. It is, I believe, $14, at least on Steam. And today we're just going to talk about some of the things that were added for this particular DLC, as well as kind of just general things about it. Now, typically, I review entire games, not DLC, but I've already done a review after 100% of Wasteland 3. And this DLC came out, so I got the rest of the 100% for it, and I figured it would be a good time to talk about it since it makes some significant changes to the game. So first things first, prior to the release of this DLC, about 1 week beforehand actually, the devs added a patch which actually added in a few more things to the game. Now technically, those features aren't related to the Steeltown DLC, however, the Steeltown DLC then expands upon those features and gives them unique things specific to the DLC, so I need to mention them. But keep in mind, the crafting, for starters, and the animal kennel are not specific to the Steeltown DLC. You'll still get access to crafting and the animal kennel, even if you don't buy the DLC, but the DLC adds things for those features. So as I just mentioned, crafting. This was added in. It's pretty straightforward. You can craft a lot of useful stuff like ammunition, traps, deployable items. All of that stuff you can now craft, and the DLC specifically adds a specific resource called tellurium steel or something like that will let you craft very specific armors and stuff from the DLC. Now, I also mentioned the animal kennel. The animal kennel allows you to just actually keep all of the animals that you go around taming in-game in one place, because previously, if you dismissed them, they would just disappear forever. Whereas now, if you dismiss them, they head back to your animal kennel. Now, this is actually important for this DLC, because this DLC adds non-lethal weapons, which allows you to, of course, go a non-lethal route. However, your animal companions do not abide by non-lethal means. They will still kill things. So if you want to go truly non-lethal, you need to send things, your animal companions that is, back to their animal kennel. Now, in addition to those things, this DLC also added stacking effects. Now, this is primarily for the new weapons that were added, which are the non-lethal, as well as a couple others that will now have like stacking damage effects that deal more damage with the number of stacks on an enemy, the maximum being 10, it would seem. Which brings us nicely into the non-lethal weapons. They added disruption weapons, which are basically items that will apply a disruption effect to the enemy that you have targeted with them. And when that stack reaches 10, it will just effectively kill the enemy, but, non-lethally. It'll just take them out of the fight, basically. Now, it is worth mentioning this does not work on anything that isn't alive. Non-lethal stuff doesn't work on, like, robots, etc. Even if you get to 10 stacks, it just won't do anything. In addition to that, there were elemental shields added to the game, which I thought was kind of a weird touch for Wasteland, to be honest. Basically, there are weapons that will allow you to apply elemental shields now, and essentially, these are just shields for a certain element type. Basically, that character will resist most damage from anything except the type of shield that they have up. So if they have like a fire shield up, you need to hit them with like anything that deals some sort of flame damage, and then it will take away stacks of their shield. They will resist most damage otherwise. And they also added like telegraphed attacks now, which are pretty straightforward. Enemies will do charge ups, and basically if you're in the telegraph on the next turn, it's going to hurt a lot. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the DLC specifically. The Steeltown DLC revolves around Steeltown, which is essentially a factory in Colorado that the Patriarch has an outpost of sorts set up at, so they can supply his state just raw resources of just various things that need made. It's like their primary manufacturing hub. And recently it's run into some problems, and the deliveries to the Patriarch have slowed down to nothing, so he sends your ranger team in to go investigate what's going on. Now beyond that, I'm not going to spoil any of it, especially with the DLC being so new. But I do want to mention I am impressed with this DLC's story, because there are several endings, and the non-lethal weapons add a lot more interaction with things, being dead or not. So it really lends itself to quite a bit of replayability, actually. I had to play through this like 4 or 5 times to get all the achievements, because all of the achievements are for the various endings and things that you can actually achieve. But the other thing I want to mention about how really cool I think this DLC is how well they tied it in with the main game, and how well the main game ties in with the DLC. So things you've done out in the actual regular main campaign will get mentioned and brought up in the DLC. Also, random encounters where certain specific people were mentioned or got away from someone actually can show up in Steeltown, because that character will be like, I needed a job, I had to go somewhere. So to just see those interactions between the main campaign and the DLC that weren't necessary at all, but that In Exile went out of their way to add, really makes this DLC feel like it's just part of the game. And that, combined with the variety of endings that you will get just from this DLC, not to mention their effects again on the main campaign and, how you leave Colorado in terms of, functional state, really impressed me, actually. So I am very much so, on that note, excited for In Exile's next DLC for Wasteland 3, which I believe is planned to be the last update for the game, or, at least the last content update for the game. But to sum up this DLC very succinctly, it's great. I think it's actually worth the money. It's more Wasteland 3. It adds some new things. Because it's Wasteland 3, it still suffers from the problems that Wasteland 3 in general tends to have. So basically, if you like Wasteland 3, very much so worth the money. If you didn't like Wasteland 3, you probably aren't going to like this either. But with that out of the way, guys, truly, thank you so much for watching. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.